Good morning, everybody. Welcome back to the stream. How are you all doing? Yeah, so the Alchemortis playtest is over now. So yeah, thank you all for playing. Thank you, everyone. It was open for a week, and we had over 1,200 people play it. But like I said, the playtests will only be running for probably maximally a week. So that's plenty of time for people to try it. Plenty of time for people to submit their feedback. And yeah, it's not a demo build. It's a build specifically designed to get feedback and to test things and everything. So thank you to everyone that tried it. Thank you to everyone for playing. I did get a whole bunch of really good feedback. So I've been working very hard on a lot of that feedback actually this weekend. So I'll show you some of that. But before we get into it, I want to remind everyone that Alchemortis is available for wishlisting, and there probably will be another playtest in the future. I definitely want to keep doing playtests until I'm confident that the game is feeling good, and then, you know, once the playtests are feeling good, then the next step is to release a demo on the Steam page, which will just be always available, right? So, yeah, that's what we're gonna do. What else? Anyway, yeah, you can wishlist Alchemortis if you're interested. If you want to support the game extra, you could subscribe on Patreon here. If you subscribe to this top tier for at least 1 month, I'm going to send you an Alchemortis Steam key when the game launches. So that's going to be a full, you'll get the full game for subscribing to this tier for at least 1 month. And your name will be listed in the in-game Alchemortis credits. And you can also support me by purchasing one of my Udemy courses. These will teach you how to build complete games in the Godot engine if you're interested. So check those out. Very much appreciate it if you would. But you can also support by liking the channel, subscribing to the video, following on Twitch, all that good stuff. Anyway, let me show you what I've got going on here. I gotta make my editor bigger so you can see it. Good morning, the Malicious Rabbit. Welcome. Nathan, welcome. Good morning to you as well. Congrats on the second playtest. It's the fourth playtest, actually, but thank you. Yeah, we did a couple of playtests very early on. Some of the early playtest versions are like... I mean, it might be actually kind of fun to download an early playtest version. Let's see. Can I figure out how to do that? Not to get too sidetracked. But let me see if I can find the first playtest version. Or an early playtest version at least. We're going to get off on a tangent already on this stream, but I haven't done this in a while. So this is going to be a build from September 1st of 2025. Oh, it's probably going to play a bunch of sounds too. Is that it? No, this one. So this is an old build of Alchemortis from September 1st of 2025. So this is the old inventory. So I think this was a playtest build. There was no mouse to move the map. Oh gosh. Boosters were slightly different. There was no quick move. There was no card tooltips. This is what the inspector looked like. Very rough. Although this way of presenting the information kind of looks clean, but it's not super visually appealing. I can see now why everyone said the game looked too dark, but that's all right. We brightened everything up. But yeah, I don't even know, should I even go into a combat here? Sell that, there's no blood animation at all. All right, let's go to combat here. There's no way of seeing the enemy abilities but without clicking into them. Oh, and that, yeah, it used to be the case that the combat would actually pause and let the cards play their animations, which was super jerky. Super herky-jerky. Anyway. Yeah. So that's a build from however many months ago. Wait, where even is the... Oh, yeah, that's right. The alchemy system actually used to just be a node on the map. So it used to be the case that you didn't have alchemy always available. So I go here, and this would be the alchemy, and then I could do this, and this, and this. Smush those all together. And I believe it used to randomize the turns as well. It used to randomize the turns and the tier and the crit chance and everything. Anyway. Yeah. That's a very, very old version of the game. Not very old. I mean, what, September? I don't know. Do the math. What is that? Well, it's like 7 months ago, right? Something like that. Am I right? I don't know. Anyway, we don't need to spend too much time with that. The second since I've been here, yeah. Hello, Emerson. Welcome. Hello, Laughing Disaster Podcast. Just realized I wasn't subscribed even though I've been watching your videos for a while. Love your game's concept and art style. Oh, thank you. Appreciate that. Yeah, and welcome to the stream. Hello, Rookie Tookie. Hello, Wooius. Welcome. How was the general feedback on the playtest? The general feedback was good. I think people enjoyed it for the most part, outside of like several somewhat annoying clarity issues. Clarity issues were the biggest thing that came up. Well, maybe not the biggest thing. Maybe the biggest thing that came up was the difficulty. The game was too easy. And then the second biggest thing that came up was the lack of clarity. And the clarity kind of broke down into two things. Like, people didn't know how to play the game. And then the people that kind of knew how to play the game, they didn't really know what the different effects were doing. So, yeah. But I've gotten several comments, like people saying, well, even though I didn't know what was going on, I was still having fun, like just going through the map randomly. And it's like, okay, well, that's good at least. Like, there's a compelling loop there. And I think fixing a lot of the clarity issues should make that loop more compelling for the people that you know, because there are some people who, like, they just kind of like, they work through the clarity issues and they just kind of like figure everything out. But then there are other people, which is understandable, where like they want the game to tell them more and the game is not telling you more. And so those people kind of like, they don't get as much enjoyment out of the game because they're kind of lost, right? So those are the biggest issues. But yeah, I would say overall it was very positive. Very positive. And I was aware of a lot of the issues that came up in the feedback. Some of the issues I was not aware of, which is good because that's, you know, the whole point of the playtest is to get, you know, people to point out my blind spots so I can go and fix it. Because it's really hard to like put myself in the shoes of a new player coming at this game fresh when I've been on like in the code base and working on the game for so long. So yeah, that's what the playtests are for, and yeah, it's great. The game needs to feel like hugging a cactus. Yeah, I guess. I guess so. Anyway, let me show you all the new things that I've added. So I added a corruption mechanic to the game, which I posted about in Discord, which it may have gotten lost because Discord is just not... I didn't post it as an announcement or anything. I just kind of posted it in the general channel, but... So the alchemy board size is now 4x4 by default. So a lot of people brought up in the playtest that, hey, you know, I've got this large card, but it's really hard to alchemize it because the board space is so limited. So the alchemy board space is 4x4 by default now. And the Death Orchid still increases that size. However, I'm wondering if this is even going to be useful anymore. So the Death Orchid still increases the size to 5x5. So we'll see. It's possible that maybe people aren't going to really find the Death Orchid that useful anymore. And so we could find a different use for that if the increased board size from 4x4 is not that useful. But anyway, so the alchemy board size has been increased by default. I also added a corruption mechanic, which I may have to make that a guaranteed trigger so I can show you. But so basically the way the corruption mechanic works is like you put items in your alchemy, and if you hover over it, says this item has a 28% chance to gain a corrupted ability. So what that means is that a corrupted ability is essentially a negative ability. So remember, if you've been following the development for a while, there used to be negative alchemy abilities that would accrue every time you did alchemy. So I've kind of brought back the negative abilities, but I've changed how they work. So there's now a chance to gain a negative ability, which is called a corrupted ability. And that corrupted ability will actually take up an ability slot if it ends up being placed on the card. So you have a higher chance of corruption the fewer items that you put into the board. It's actually based on the size of the items. So if you just want to like alchemize a 1x1 and a 1x2 card, that's going to give you a almost 50% chance of gaining a corrupted ability, versus if I do this 2x2 with this 1x2, see how it's a 28% chance. So the chance of corruption is based on the amount of cells that you fill on the alchemy board, and that will ultimately go to 0 if you fill, I think, at least 8 cells in this board. And that can be filled with anything. It doesn't have to be, it could be reagents, it can be whatever else. But basically, you're incentivized, if you want to have a guaranteed no corruption, you have to fill up the alchemy board. But you can still do like the pairwise alchemization to get more predictable results. However, now you're running, for example, a 28% chance to gain a corrupted ability, right? So let's just see, I guess, if this happens. So I'll put that in there. And there we go, I got a corrupted ability. You see the tentacles there? So I add a little tentacle animation, kind of similar to the legendary drop animation, except the tentacles come out. And that will tell you that this item has gained a corrupted ability. So now we can see that this Fist of Anger, it has this corrupted ability, apply too wholly to enemy. So for corrupted abilities, they are negative abilities incurred as a result of imprecise alchemy. Corrupted abilities cannot be replaced or transferred to other items via alchemy. So corrupted abilities are basically innate as well. They cannot be removed by normal means, but they also can't be transferred to other items. So I could take this corrupted item and I could use it in another alchemy, and I'm not at risk of that corrupted ability hopping onto something else. So yeah, is that right? That is right, okay. And I don't know if you could tell on the stream, but I also added just like a little background shader, like purple background for things that are corrupted. So you can kind of get an inkling of like which items actually have negative abilities on them. So yeah, and then these things can keep accruing corrupted abilities up to their ability slot count. So I could theoretically corrupt this such that it has, 5 corrupted abilities on it. And then it would basically just be a purely negative item at that point. So why did I make this change? So with the playtest that you all tried, one of the problems was that it was really attractive just to do alchemy with 2 cards at a time, or 2 items at a time, because that controlled the alchemy results very well. And there was basically no downside to doing that. And there was kind of like a wrong set of incentives, because I want players to use more items in alchemy, but having more items in alchemy actually makes the results less predictable. So the corruption system is designed to add a cost to getting very predictable alchemy outputs, right? So I could still have that the level of predictability that I want by just putting in a few items at a time. However, that's going to give me a quite significant chance of actually getting a negative ability. So there's a disincentive here. So there's a risk reward now basically for doing pairwise alchemy. You still have the controllability. You still know what abilities are going to be transferred onto an item, especially if it has empty ability slots, but you're going to run the risk of gaining that corrupted ability. You can get rid of that corruption penalty or that corruption chance by filling the board, but that creates less predictability in terms of what items will or what abilities will ultimately end up on which items. And then in addition to that, I also changed how filling the empty slots work. So previously, if a card had empty ability slots, the alchemy operation would only fill those empty ability slots and then it would do nothing else. So if I have 3 empty ability slots on an item and there's 10 abilities in the pool of abilities to choose from, it would only fill up those 3 slots, and it would stop. But now what I've done is I've made it so it still fills the empty slots first, but then if there are remaining abilities in the ability pool, it will randomize however many existing abilities it has. So in this case, the Fist of Anger here, this item will gain 2 abilities, and that's because there's only 2 other abilities in the pool that are not coming from the Fist of Anger. So that means that those 2 empty ability slots are going to be filled with the turn cooldown reduction and the damage from the skeleton. But if I add a Viper in here, this has 2 abilities. So now this says this item will gain 2 abilities, so it's going to fill up those empty ability slots, and then 2 abilities will be replaced because there's a total of 4 abilities in the pool now. So this was a little bit of a tweak too. So this kind of, again, is working towards, you can do the alchemy that's very predictable, right? I know exactly what ability is going to end up on this Fist of Anger, but now I'm running a chance of gaining a corrupted ability, right? Or I could put in a 3rd item or a 4th item that has abilities that I wouldn't mind having on the item, and that removes the corruption possibility as well. So anyway, those are the changes that I've made recently. I still have to play test these myself, but I like how it's going, and I like how, it's tolerable even if you do get a corrupted ability. It's still going to be the case that it's not always going to be a pure negative. Like, the corrupted ability may be an ability that's just kind of like a situational debuff. Like, there's one corrupted ability where it's like, this item will be paralyzed if it's on the left edge of the board, right? So then the workaround is like, okay, I just can't put this item on the left edge of the board, right? So it's like an indirect way of adding like constraints to items in a lot of cases. So anyway, and obviously I can tweak those abilities and everything, but I like how that's working because I think the incentives are good now. I think there's the risk reward factor, and yeah, I think it should be all right. Problem with Death Orchid now is that item is fairly large in the inventories, but usefulness while still there's greatly diminished or situational. Yeah. That's true. Is this game your biggest project in terms of scale and time and effort that you've put in? Hello, Fizz. Yes. This is the largest effort by far. And yeah, I mean, it's just the largest effort across basically every dimension, across like art, game design, content, design, whatever you want to talk about. Yeah, definitely. Definitely the case. Good morning, Ninja Link. Hello, Eto, welcome. Does it tell you what the corruption chance is? It does, yes. So if I put these 2 in here, it says this item has a 15% chance to gain a corrupted ability. This item has a 15% chance to gain a corrupted ability. I remember watching one of your videos, but I forgot what game about. Some optimization video. Was it the recent optimization video? Then it was this game, yeah. Hello, I am Tufa, by the way. He made an absolute banger game before this called Gunforged. Thank you, Willius. Appreciate that. I think Gunforged, to be perfectly honest with you, I think Gunforged is a decent game. I think especially for the price, like when it's on sale especially, you can get a couple hours of enjoyment out of it. But if I had spent more time and more effort on Gunforged, I think it could have been made better. But, at that point, I was kind of tired of working on Gunforged, and it was in a pretty decent state. And I just wanted to move on to another project because, like, Gunforged development was not, to be honest, it was not super fun. Mostly because the game got reworked like 3 different times during development. And so I was just kind of like tired of reworking systems. And I was like, okay, I'm just going to get this out. And I don't think it's a bad game, and I think the reviews reflect that. but it definitely did not realize its full potential. So, you know, maybe there's an opportunity for me to go do Gunforged 2 in the future where I can hopefully realize a lot of that missed potential. But I'm glad that I got that game finished and out, and then I moved on to Alka Mortis, because I think Alka Mortis is just a better game across every dimension. And yeah. But here's the thing, Alka Mortis can't be a better game across every dimension without, you know, learning all the things that I learned from Gunforge development, right? So, yeah. Anyway, 80 stream streak, dang. What are corruptions? Corruptions are negative abilities that take up an ability slot. So if you have an item with 5 ability slots and it gets a corrupted ability, it basically has 1 negative ability and 4 other abilities, right? And that corrupted ability is permanent, or at least it's permanent normally. I'll probably introduce a reagent that can remove it. Actually, let me see. I actually don't know if the Alkahest will remove that. Let me see. So this did get corrupted. So let's add item Alkahest. Removes all abilities from all items. So it gained a corrupted ability but removed that. Okay. I might need to change Alkahest. I might as well make Alkahest clear the corrupted abilities too. Now the problem is that this corrupted tag, so I'm getting into like a weird situation now with my abilities. So the weird thing about these is that these abilities are set as negative abilities, but they're also set as innate. So the innate flag is basically just a flag that means this is not an alchemizable ability. Like it cannot be removed or replaced or transferred, that's it. But then I have flags that sit on top of that too. So for instance, for my reagents, alchemy added ability, for example, this is an innate ability, but it's also a reagent ability. And so this flag will take precedence when I'm doing the description generation. So we've got this big chain of if-else. And I basically say, look, if it's a reagent ability, put that alchemy tag on it. If it's a negative ability, put that corrupted tag on it. If it's innate, put the innate tag. But the thing is, whenever this is set and whenever this is set, the is innate flag is also set. So it's basically like just a priority order. Like we don't want to show the innate tag if it's also corrupted. We want to show corrupted, right? We don't want to show the innate tag if it's also a reagent ability. We want to show the alchemy tag. So I'm getting into a weird situation here. This is going to be even weirder when I go to, for example, use the Alkahest. I want it to remove abilities that are corrupted, but not abilities that are otherwise innate. So that's a little bit weird. I may change this. I might change this to just an enum instead of several flags. That may be easier. And then I could have like an is innate method that basically says, okay, if it's a reagent ability or a negative ability or just like raw innate or whatever. I don't know. Anyway, I don't know. We're going off on tangents today. What happened to Dust, by the way? I got rid of Dust. Yeah, I got rid of Dust. The dual currency wasn't really doing much. It wasn't really creating meaningful tensions between the two currencies. So making blood the single currency that is used for everything, for purchasing items from the shop, from getting higher health upgrades, for doing alchemy, I think that adds a much more interesting tension into the game because it's a scarce resource that is useful for many things. And so I think it's just a lot more compelling to have just one currency rather than two. The dust was originally introduced as a way of, yeah, it's just one of those things where it had an original intent in an old version of how the alchemy worked, and as I reworked the alchemy more and more, it just became less and less useful until it was like, there's no point in maintaining two currencies anymore, so that's gone. I do like dust though. I mean, I was tempted to, instead of making the main currency blood, just make the main currency dust, because I think that's just, I don't know, it's kind of more interesting. Add some more color into this. panel. Also, I like the dust icon better than the blood icon. And I think dust kind of makes more sense as a currency as well. But I don't know. What do you all think? Like, do you think that thematically, like, would it make sense to earn dust? Like, let's say that, yeah, we get rid of blood and dust becomes the main currency. Would it make sense to get dust from combat? And dust from selling items? Right now, items sell for blood. And just make the dust the currency for everything? Yeah, there's a little tentacle VFX when you get a corrupted ability. I'll also make a sound effect for it too. So like the legendary has like this big sound effect that plays when you get the legendary ability or legendary item. Probably make a similar like foreboding or scary sound when you get a corrupted one. Hello, Clickertail, welcome. Do you have any advice for actually creating fun gameplay ideas? I know it's different for everyone, but how did you come up with a core concept for Alchemortis? I mean, honestly, I think I'm not an expert, so I'm just a guy on the internet. Take my advice with a grain of salt. But for me, it's just like, I just kind of like copy what other successful games in the genre are doing. So I played the Bazaar and I was like, hey, this would be cool as a single player roguelike game. So I basically just borrowed like the auto battler combat. I mean, that's part of the genre, right? The auto battler combat. But then I borrowed the Bazaar's ideas of like having multiple upgrade moments before you engage in combat. But I just made that a single player like roguelite formula. So that's how the concept came about. And then the process of making the game actually fun is mostly just an iterative process. It's just like trying things out, seeing if they work. If they're not working, you tweak things. So like, I think for me, it's helpful to think about like, what is the experience that I want the player to have? In the case with Alchemortis, I want the player to have the experience of continuing to make incremental improvements to their build, and for those incremental improvements to manifest themselves in like your combat success, right? So, you know, getting to a combat where you barely scrape by, like you beat the enemy and you've only got 10 health left. It's like, I want the player to feel like, oh, if I hadn't put that heal item on my board, you know, I would have died right there, right? So I want the player to feel like they're constantly making improvements to their build, but the decisions that they're making are actually making a difference in their combat experiences. And so that's like the guiding, like that's the vision, right? Like that's the experience that I want players to have. And then everything else can be viewed from that lens, right? So like to the extent the player is not having that experience, what are the systems in the game that are either not contributing to that or are contributing to that too much such that it kind of like destroys it? So I think in the current playtest version of the game, the player is getting too powerful, and that is destroying the vision because like none of the combat encounters are close. You're just blowing up the enemy, right? And so like fixing that actually required removing or scaling down the player power level a little bit. I actually reworked the bleed status, I reworked the poison status, I reworked fire, because those were the main culprits, right? So anyway, that's what I'm doing for this game. I don't know, I'm not a game design expert, but hello, Neozoid, welcome. What is that heart that replaced dust? Dang, the game changed so much, amazing progress. That heart is the resurrection stone. So there's a new resurrection mechanic. You can't indefinitely resurrect. When you die, you have to spend a resurrection stone to resurrect. And there are a couple of opportunities on the map to get more resurrection stones. But if you die and you don't have any resurrection stones, then your run is over. So if I die here, here's the new resurrection mechanic. This costs a resurrection stone. I resurrect there. And then if I die again, I don't have any resurrection stones, so I have to end my run. So yeah, that's how that works. Shouldn't the grids maybe be more bright? They're pretty dark for being a major part of the game. None of the playtesters commented on the brightness of the grids. So I got some comments about, I mean, it was kind of weird. I got some comments about the game being too dark, and then I got some comments about the purples being way too bright. And I think that that probably just comes down to the individual displays that people are on. So I think at a minimum, I'm going to add like brightness, a brightness slider to the game. But I may also add like palette shift options. You know, so players could like change the palette if like the purples aren't working or whatever. But I think like brightness and contrast sliders at least, or maybe just a brightness slider would be good. Hello, Zabros, welcome. Good to see you. Is this going to be in June Next Fest? No, it's not. No, it's not. I wanted to release it for June Next Fest, but I'm still not like there are, every time I run a playtest, there are still major issues that are being brought up, and so I don't want to release for the Next Fest until the game is like really solid. Like I want the demo build to basically be the final release build with just like scaled back content. So we're not going to do this June Next Fest, no. You think blood is more thematically appropriate? Yeah, probably. I'm doing well, how are you doing? Blood makes more sense even though I like dust, yeah. For example, the cauldron is brighter, yeah. Blood is the OG. Hello, Zachary. After your multiplayer course, I was doing some Googling to see what kind of networking my multiplayer game should implement. I was confused on what kind we learned in the course. Thought it was client server, but everything I looked at talked about dedicated servers. Did we just learn client server without a dedicated server? Is there a name for this? Yeah, I mean, we did implement a server authoritative architecture. It's just that there is also a client running on the server. So a client ends up hosting the server, and they serve as the authority, right? So it's essentially the same concept as a dedicated server. It's just like the server is being run on the same machine as a client as well, right? And I believe this is actually how Minecraft works. So when you play a single player world in Minecraft, I'm pretty sure that basically spins up a local server. And so you're actually playing as a client on your local server. And so that's why, like in Minecraft, for instance, you can open up your world to LAN and then somebody else can join, is because it's a multiplayer game from the get. Even if you're just playing single player, it's like a local, you know, multiplayer game where your machine is running the server and it's also running the client that connects to the server. And then other clients can connect because you're running a server. So I don't know what that model is called exactly, but it is server authoritative. It's just that the client is also running the server. Animation players, Eto, yeah. Here you go. Remove blood, bring back dust, and rename it to Essence of Life. Now you can use it all over the place and make more sense, yeah. That is a good idea. Maybe I should do that. Which do you prefer between the two? I don't know. Between two what? Something look darker because most of the items have been modified to be more bright, but not the grids. Well, like I said, I didn't get any comments from playtesters about the grids being too dark, so I'm not going to address that until it's a problem. How many wishlists did you get so far? I think it's... Last time I checked, it was 3,200. So we got several hundred wish lists from the playtest and from the video that I released. Alchemortis did hit 24 concurrent players. Awesome. That's pretty good. That was such a big and buggy transition when Minecraft added the server in the client. Yeah. Yeah, that's, I mean, you know, multiplayer is hard. Multiplayer is hard. Anyway, we should get going on some work here. By the way, in my opinion, you're the best game dev on YouTube for Godot. Well, thank you. I appreciate that. You explain everything in a really clear way, and your videos are so cool and useful. Also, the project analysis are awesome. Thank you. Yeah, I appreciate that. I'm glad you enjoyed those code review videos. I do want to do more code review videos. It's just I don't know. I'm so monomaniacally focused on Alchemortis that I don't make time to do anything else. Hope you get all the success because you definitely deserve it. Thank you. Thank you, thank you. Okay, we got a couple of bugs here to fix, but we also have this summarized feedback, which I haven't started reading through yet, or I have read through, but I haven't like started pulling items out. We could do quality of life stuff would always be nice. So there is something that I want to do, and maybe this would be interesting. So now that the alchemy board is bigger, I have a problem, which is that it is possible for the alchemy board to grow so tall that like you can't see all of the items because of the. So if I do, let's see, debug, test player cards. So with the new alchemy board size change, I could, for example, get a bunch of gold. Now this is probably not going to happen in like the real game, but I think it's still good to make sure that this is handled. Definitely feeling the pain of not having a quick add to alchemy here too. So if I stuff this with gold and a skeleton dragon. So the board kind of like, I can still see everything here, but it's like clipping up into here. And you know, players mention that they don't realize that they need to empty this board here to be able to do the alchemy again. And so I was thinking of a 2 birds, 1 stone situation. I can make more room for this alchemy board by actually sliding this cauldron off screen and moving the grid down. And then that would also be your indicator like, wait, the cauldron is not here. How am I supposed to do alchemy? Oh, wait, I have to empty this board first. Let it reset, and then we could slide the cauldron back in. So the idea is just make the cauldron go off screen, just disappear from the visual area while the alchemy result is still pending, like while you still need to take cards out. And then when that's done, this alchemy cauldron can slide back in. And then sliding this out also means that this board here can just be centered and like take up the space that it needs. Because I really don't think that the board is going to end up ever being taller than this area here. I don't think it's possible. Even if you were to stuff a skeleton dragon in there and get like 3 other skeleton dragons from the gold, I still don't think it would be that big. So yeah, we can, I think we can try that. I think I want to do that. Shift or middle click to quick add would be handy. Yeah, I got to think about what exactly the keybind, the inputs would be for that, but yeah, shift click I think would be good. What if I want to use all the cards again? Well, the problem is that I have to let the player, or I have to have the player clear the alchemy board, because the alchemy board could actually be bigger than what you're allowed to use. So, like the perfect example is doing the skeleton with all this gold here. That's going to actually create, in a lot of situations, a board that is bigger than what you typically can use. And so if I just were to re-alchemize this, I'm getting a bigger board than I'm usually allowed to have. Which, I mean, maybe that wouldn't be a problem. But like, so this is 5x5 instead of 4x4 now. So I could like remove certain cards, certain items, and then put new items in if I wanted to. and basically just have a bigger board. So that's why I don't allow that. I mean, maybe there could be a middle ground, which is that you remove cards until it does shrink down back to its normal size, and then you don't need to remove any other cards. Yeah, it's a good question. I don't know. I'll have to figure that out, I guess. It would definitely be clearer if the cauldron was off screen. That's what I'm thinking. So I think maybe let's give that a try. And then, of course, like when there's a quick move button, I mean, there already is a quick move from the alchemy to the inventory. It's just the there's no quick move from inventory to alchemy. Auto sorting stash would be nice. That should be possible. That should be possible. Just trying to think of where I would put that button. Maybe it could just be like a smaller button down here or something. Anyway. Hello, Tony Choppa. Welcome. So we're going to do that. Let's just see what we can do. Small button that pops out when you open it for sorting. Yeah, we could do that. I think that would work. Let me just add that to the backlog. What's this game about? You can check out the Steam page in the description below. But basically it's a roguelike auto battler where you can use alchemy to create your own builds and synergies. So if that sounds interesting, yeah, you could look at the Steam page. There's more info there. The Steam page will be updated sooner rather than later. So we'll see how that goes. Okay. So now we gotta send... We're gonna send this alchemy. Let's see. We got the floor shadow. Yeah, this basically needs to be sent off screen, so probably will need to be... Yeah, some kind of animation. And then the other thing that's going to need to happen is that this clickable control is going to need to go away. And this margin contain... Oh, This scene is actually going to need to be restructured quite a bit to support what I want to do here, but I think it is going to be a big improvement, so maybe I'll do that. How hard do you think finding work in game dev is? Is it better to work as an indie dev, maybe with a few members, or for a big company? I don't know. I'm the wrong guy to ask about that. I've never tried to work in game dev. I've always just done my own thing. So I don't know. What I gather just from hearing what other people have to say is that getting work in game development at all is really hard. And I'm assuming it would be even harder to get work at a smaller like indie studio as well. So yeah, I don't know. I don't have any experience with that. Maybe change the clickable control to another scene. No, I don't think I need to do that. I'm also working on a project inspired by the Bizarre but less roguey, more a mash of D2 Bizarre JRPG. It's proven very difficult in the design front due to its binary-ish outcome of fights. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, there are... My impression is that auto battlers are just like... They're all about the strategy before the fight, and the fight that you actually end up engaging with is basically just a build check, right? Like there's nothing you can do typically during a fight to actually change the encounter. It's all about your preparation, right? And then the fight is basically just like a nice animated visual way of showing whether your build is strong or not. And so that comes with certain problems, right? Which is like, you have no opportunities to like change your strategy while the fight is occurring, you know? And yeah, but I mean, it's all mathematical, right? Like the fight is basically decided ahead of time. It's just that it's so complicated that no person can really understand before they enter a fight whether they're going to win or not. Like they can't understand with absolute certainty because there's so many variables flying around. But at the end of the day, it's like, yeah, it's perfectly determinable even before the fight plays out who's going to win. Unless, of course, you have... So, like, I have crit chance in this game. And so the idea behind crit chance is not just because it's like a fun stat to have, but the crit chance actually does add an element of randomness into the outcome, which is that, you know, you may actually win an enemy fight because the enemy didn't crit, right? If they had crit, then maybe you would lose. So the crit chance and the crit damage multiplier does end up adding an element of randomness into the outcome. But otherwise, it's like, it's perfectly determinable ahead of time who's going to win if there's no random elements like that. In some auto fighters, you can choose when to activate hero skills. Yeah, that's true. That's true, but... Okay, what are we going to do here? So this anim output, this gets played... So I think basically when this is done, this set alchemy output cards, that's when I need to send the alchemy pot out. But then I also need to change the position of this board here. So we'll make it really simple to start. I'll see if I can get the mechanics of it working. So we send the pot out, center the board. And then bring it back in when the board state gets reset. Hopefully that will be smooth enough, but we'll see. All right, anyway, I'm going to take a quick 3-minute break here. Then when I come back, we'll get started on this and we'll see how that goes. And yeah, I'll be right back. All right, I'm back. Use a pick 3 system that happens mid-fight, but I'm leaning towards active skills. It's hard not to break the chill flow of being an auto-battler. Yeah, that's true. Yeah. Hello, Dan Garep. Do you use steering behavior in your games? I'm putting some time into learning the concept. Yes, I do, yeah. I use steering behaviors extensively in Gunforged, and I'm using them in a couple of places in this game, but mostly just for like little visual effects, not for anything gameplay related. Okay, let's take a look at what we need to do here. Can I just take this and we'll make it like a quick animation. Just slide this out here. Is a 128 enough? So obviously we'll make this nicer. And we'll also do the floor and the floor shadow with it. Create some new node 2Ds for this. Okay. Move that over as well. We'll copy this. Paste that there. Oh, this needs to be cubic. Okay. Same with this. Insert key. Paste this. Cubic. Okay. So we'll make that animation a little bit snazzier. Maybe it'll just play this animation backwards, but let's do this. Read only, string name, anim, slide out. Okay, so there's our slide out. And then when we do set alchemy output cards, is that right? Set alchemy. Oh, yeah, here. Okay, so let's do this then. So we play the slide out animation. Let's see what happens. Just want to get a feel for what that looks like, and then we'll figure out how to actually get the board to take up the space that it needs to take up. So just do that, do that. Okay, that's not quite working the way that I want it to. Might have to restructure a lot of how this is working to get this to work the way that I want it to, but we'll try it. So yeah, now we got to get this board, however this is working. This control, transform, this is shrink begin. If I do shrink center, this is going to be somewhat of a nightmare. So I don't know if I can show this on screen at the same time, but I can, yeah, I can't. Everything's too big for the stream, but basically I could change it to the shrink center flag to go here. I have it at shrink begin here. Because I think what happens is as this board container grows, it gets pushed upward. So what it does is essentially make sure that there's always this same gap between the pot and the bottom of the board. But now, of course, the problem is that, like, I can't just change this flag. Where is it? I can't just change this flag to center because that's just gonna like shift it down in a very jerky manner. I need it to be like a smooth transition to the center. I need it to be a smooth transition to the center of the screen. There's also a question of like, how is this ordering going to work? Because it's still going to clip the top. It's still going to clip the top of this for a little bit until the pot actually plays its out animation. See, so it's going to be in this state until that pot goes away and then it can come down. What am I going to do about this? Interesting. There's a Windows tool that lets you choose any window, put it to always be on top. Yeah, I think Power Toys allows you to do that, but I don't feel like figuring that out right now. I actually don't know what I'm going to do about this. Instead of sliding it out, I could just have the board go over top of the alchemy container maybe, and I could, let's see. I could just fade it out. And put the board over top of it. What am I gonna do? Hello, David. Welcome. Good to see you again. Hello, Vincent. Do you feel like streaming divides your attention or just as productive developing offline? Well, I think I'm certainly more productive developing offline because I don't have to pay attention to the chat and everything, but the streaming, I mean, it's productive in a different sense, which is that, you know, I can talk to all of you, I can bounce ideas around, you know, I can get like real-time feedback on like what I'm thinking about doing, which is like, you know, it's helpful in a different way, right? Like there are certainly situations where, you know, I just need to sit down and work on something without distractions. But then there are times where it's like, you know, having the real-time input is also helpful. So yeah, it's a different thing. And there are streams where I get just as much done while I'm streaming as I would have offline. But I'm trying to think, what do I do with this? Now see, that one's not a problem because it didn't extend up that way. What I could do, potentially, is have this board able to grow behind the alchemy container, the alchemy pot here. So maybe make it able to extend behind this. Let the alchemy pot finish its animations and then play out. That may be the way to do it, although that may also look a little bit weird. So if I make this able to grow below the alchemy pot, so imagine this whole thing just gets shifted down below the alchemy. The alchemy is still like playing its animation just over top of the board, and then it slides out. But I would only want to do that if it exceeds a certain Y dimension. So now we're getting into like some very interesting concepts here. I'm almost thinking about doing a mix of everything. So this pot slides out, the board will be centered, and then have the pot slide back in, but also darken at the same time. So it's like, there's somewhat of like a rotation happening where it's like the pot is rotating into the background, and then the board renders on top of the pot. And then once you clear the board, the pot can brighten back up again to indicate that it's come back to the foreground and is interactable again. So maybe that's the way to do it. If I can get this board to grow, so initially it will grow behind the alchemy pot so that the alchemy can finish all of its animations. The pot will slide out and then slide back in, but it will be darkened and change the draw order so that it's behind the board. And then you empty the board gets reset, and the alchemy pot brightens back up and it's ready to go again. That may be the way to do it. So now it's just a question of how do I actually get that to work with my setup here. So the core problem here is that this grows upwards always, which is a little bit annoying. So what I could do is actually what I should probably do is I should probably make this the default size. This is 4x4 now, which I unfortunately can't visualize here with this, but that's okay. So it's 4x4, that's more like what it's looking like. And then as it grows, it gets pushed up. So actually, let's make it the maximum size that it can possibly be, which is with the death orchids, that's 5x5, is that right? 5 times 18 is 90. I think that's right. So we'll do that, and then, so that's the minimum size of that board container. This margin container, what do we want the anchors to be here? Let's do full rect. No, that's not what I want to do. Do I even need that anymore? Trying to get this laid out properly is a little bit of a nightmare. This, let's subtract 18 from that. Subtract 18 from that. Do I need this margin container anymore? Oh. Maybe this control should be 90 by 90. We change this to shrink end. Why is that filling up all that space? I don't understand that. Maybe we change this to a margin container. 90 by 90. Something is weird here. Do I need this to be shrink center? Okay. We want this to be shrink end. So if this goes up, yeah, okay. I think that will work. Oh boy. I don't even know how this is getting a position offset of 5 either. I don't know. All right, heading out early today. Have a great stream. Thank you, Ninja Link. Thanks for joining. And I'll see you in the next one. Does this whole thing need to move down now? I'm messing everything up, but it's okay. We'll figure it out. Wrong one. Okay, let me just see what that does. I'm gonna have to move the floor again. So I can change this, move this down even more. Okay, so this is the new, just the new setup that we got here. Then I need to move the floor down as well. Hopefully I can get this back where it's supposed to be. Okay, so this is the new layout that we've got. Now the question is, what happens, for instance, if I add a death orchid? So that just grows upwards still, which is fine in that case. But I need this to actually grow downward. Oh, I need to actually rerun this. So this is not actually going to grow down, it's still going to grow upward. Oh, it did grow down. Oh, perfect. It's just not centered. Okay. So now I need to figure out how to get this board centered in that area after the pot goes out. That was basically working the way that I want it to, though. So did you see how the board grew behind the alchemy pot? So the alchemy kind of stayed out in front, finished its animations, and then slid out. So that's basically what I wanted it to do. So the board grows behind the alchemy pot slides down. Then after that alchemy pot slides out, ideally what I want this to do is I want this to slide down such that it's centered in that area. So now there's going to be a question of how to do that. Maybe I should stage what I have before I break anything. So we stage that. So this clickable control, this does not have any effect whatsoever on the layout. So whether this is here or not doesn't matter. So I can just ignore that for now. So it's all going to be about this. And what I want it to do is I want it to have the shrink center container sizing ultimately, so you can see how that looks there. But like I said, I can't just switch that flag at runtime. And the reason I can't do that is because it's just gonna snap into place. I want it to be a smooth animation. So the question is, how do I get that? I mean, there's one way of doing it, which is I could maintain a separate shadow control that mirrors the custom minimum size of this control, or the size of this control rather. And then what I can do is I can actually animate this board node 2D down to the right spot. Maybe that's the way to do it. It's a little bit wonky, but you know. The other alternative is to actually do the calculation myself and figure out like, okay, like basically reproduce a sort of shrink center logic, figure out where the center needs to be, and then animate the board that way. But I think it's going to just be easier to do like that shadow control that I mentioned. So if this one is shrink center, it's going to center it in this alchemy container here. So what I'm going to do is I will actually create, let's create that margin container shadow board position, something like this. We're going to make this the same exact custom minimum size here. So it's 90 by 90. We're also going to keep the, we're going to do shrink center horizontal and shrink center horizontal and shrink center vertical. So that's the shadow board position. This has a board container. See, I don't know where this... Where is this position of 918 coming from? Oh, I guess this is set to shrink center as well. Right, that makes sense. So this control is set such that it has a custom minimum size of the max size of the board, which is 5 by 5. But this board container is going to be 72 by 72 to begin with. So this should actually be 72 by 72. So you see how these are aligned now? So the idea is I will actually take this board and I will move this root position down to where the shadow board position is, which is like right there or something. I overshot it by 1. Or 2, I mean. So if I actually move that board position down to where that shadow root is, that's going to smooth animate it to where it needs to be such that it'll be exactly centered. Oh, this is kind of like, it's like a Rube Goldberg machine. Make sure I set that to ignore. That's also ignore, okay. All right, so we've got the shadow board position. So let's grab a reference to that. So what I'm going to do now is, I think what I want to listen to is board container. Do I have a reference to the board container? I do. So in here, board container dot resized plus equals on board container resized. Private void board container resized. We're going to set the shadow board container dot custom minimum size is equal to board container dot size. And then what we're going to do is we're going to do shadow board position dot size equals vector 2.0. That forces a reset. And so let's just do this test real quick then. onboard container resized. Oh, onboard container resized. Okay, so when we play this anim slide out here, I'm just going to create a tween. Tween.tween interval 0.4. Actually, I don't need to do that. I can do tween position of board, and then we're going to do to position. It's going to be board.toLocal shadow board position dot global position. Duration, we'll just do 0.5f, set delay 0.4, set ease out cubic. Okay. Let's see if that works. So obviously I'm gonna have to maintain all these different animation states and everything, but local parameter named tween cannot be declared in this scope because of yada yada. Okay. So much in one scene. This is how real game dev does it. Yeah. And the other thing that is you have to keep in mind too is like I've been changing the alchemy so much such that, you know, if I were to create this scene knowing my current requirements, I may not have built it this way, right? But what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to just make minimal changes to what already exists to accomplish what I want. And that means that there's going to be kind of like this weird way of doing things because like the alternate approach is just to rebuild the scene from scratch with what I have in mind, but that's just not like very economical in terms of efficiency, right? So that's the unfortunate reality of it. It's like I'm trying to work with what I have without blowing up my workload. And so just making incremental changes to a scene over time ends up with situations where it's like, maybe that's not the ideal way to do it, but that's because I didn't know my end state ahead of time, right? Ooh, look at that. So that's kind of working. This delay is going to be a problem because yeah, I'm gonna have to coordinate all these animations a little bit better, but the point is that that's working for the most part. So if I can make the, yeah, so that's centered now, which is good. So yeah, there's just a question now of like animation sequencing. I think what I want to do here is let's do pot animation player dot queue. Oh, there's no way to queue an animation. That's okay. I'll just do a slide in animation. Clickable control. I just want to make sure that I'm disabling this clickable control. Remove input lock, add input lock. Yeah, so it's adding an input lock there. So what I should be able to do is I'm just going to actually, I'm going to duplicate this animation. I'm not allowed to duplicate it. Slide out. Duplicate. Slide in. Actually, I might just make this, yeah, I'm actually going to delete this. Delete the slide in animation, slide out. So let's make this just 0.8 and then we'll set this back to 0. Okay, so what's going to happen is this is going to go out and back in. We will just change this ease here. Okay, and then what I'm going to do here is I'm actually going to tween this visuals node here. I want to tween the material, or not tween, but animate the material. So we're going to keyframe the material there. We're going to set the material here. Actually, do I want to do that? No, I don't think I want to do that. Oh, shoot. Okay. Let's get rid of that. Reset. Let's just get rid of this material. Oh, it didn't add it to the reset animation. Okay. Let's just do... I'll just create a new method in here. Private void. Slide out. Anim slide out fade out. Visual utilities dot fade out. Visuals. I need to extend this a little bit. Okay. This is getting a little bit messy, but that's okay. Okay. Fade out visuals to value. We're going to do 0.5. We'll see how that looks. Okay, so we're going to build this now. I'm actually just going to call that method. The reason why I'm not doing it with the animation player is because it's just going to be a little bit hard to coordinate, because I need to change the material, but then I also need to animate a property on that material, and I'm actually not sure if I can do that with the animation player. So this is just going to be a little bit nicer, I think. So I can do anim slide out fade out here. And so that will call that fade out animation. And we'll make this, we'll make the animation a lot nicer. Just trying to get the basics in place first, and then we'll see how that works. Yeah, so that's darkened now, which is good. I may actually turn down the darkening there a little bit. But I need to also change this show behind parent for this clickable control. Visibility, show behind parent. We're going to turn that on here. Oops, that's going to put those in front. Oh, do I have to do this here too? Okay. Oh, no. Okay, so that doesn't do much here, but that should put it behind the board now. So it's going to go off screen, it's going to fade out, and it's going to go behind the board. And then the board is going to become centered, which will be nice. Okay. Does that look centered to you? That's 45 pixels. 58 pixels. It is not centered. You know why it might not be centered is because I think this board position needs to be set later on. So we're going to get rid of this set delay here. We're going to actually do an action that sets the... No, that's not going to work either. Okay, well... I think what's happening is that the shadow, this shadow position, is not actually updated by the time this tween gets defined with its arguments. So one way around this is to do a tween method. Board dot position is equal to board dot, or is equal to dot lerp linear interpolate. How do I do this? Lerp, there we go. From 0f to 1f double duration 0.5. We do the set delay. Okay, so the benefit of doing that tween method instead of tweening the property is that that's just going to call that function or that method every time the tween ticks, which means that it's going to be guaranteed to have the latest position for that shadow position root. And hopefully that works. It should be centered after that. There we go. That looks much more centered to me. But we can also just make sure that that's the case. Is it this one? Or did I open the wrong one? I think I opened the wrong one. That's 39. This is not centered either, is it? 65. What in the world? Why is this not centered? I'm going to change this type to a reference rect and turn off editor only. We'll see how this looks. I don't know why this is being so difficult. Learning a lot from watching. Okay, good. Yeah, I'm glad you are learning. Godot supports C#. I think it has its own language, right? It does. Yeah, it has GD script. But it does indeed support GD script, or C#, I mean. That looks correct to me. It's almost like it's like 1 pixel off, but if it's 1 pixel off, that's okay. But it shouldn't be off at all. That's the thing that's bothering me. Is that board should be perfectly centered such that that red border there is right, like perfectly matches the edges. That's the goal anyway. Yeah, see, it's not going to the right spot. So why is that not going to the right spot? I mean, I could just change the global Y position to match. I guess it must be a problem with the to local. Yeah, I think it must be a problem with the to local, because this is inheriting a bunch of transforms from here, so maybe it should actually be the control here. So this is maybe the board control. Maybe it needs to be board control to local. Let's just try doing that real quick. I think it's just me using the wrong thing. Board control dot to local, and there's no to local method on control nodes for some reason. Get global transform times point. I think that's right. Wait, no. Get global transform times point. Let me just look at what to local does in here. Oh, it doesn't. Okay, it doesn't have the implementation. There's no to local, so I have to use the transforms. That's probably not going to work. I don't know how to do transforms. Hello. Hope all is well for you. Just curious how long you've used Godot for and what other engines you come from. I've been using Godot since 2017, and I used to use GameMaker Studio a lot. So I came from GameMaker, went to Godot. I don't have much experience in any other game engine. Godot just worked really well for me. Especially coming from GameMaker, Godot felt like a breath of fresh air because there was so much more like baked-in functionality. But yeah, I've basically been using only Godot since 2017. Did it work? Oh, did I do my transforms correctly? Awesome. Hey, I'll take it. Transforms are one of those things that I need to like actually sit down and learn some of these days. But oh, no, never mind, that doesn't work. Oh no. I might just move the global Y position and call it a day. Okay. What type of game are you making? It's a roguelike auto battler. The Steam page is linked below if you want to check it out. So yeah, but it's a roguelike auto battler where you can use alchemy to make your own builds and synergies. Looking at that menu when you're moving items from one side of the screen to the other would be a nice quality of life addition to have a shift click functionality. Yeah, I'm going to do that for sure. Didn't a rect get increased in size earlier in 18 pixel increments? Didn't that mess with inheritance? Did that mess with inheritance? I don't think so, but we'll see. It looks fine. Yeah, I mean, it's not that it looks fine. That's the problem, because I agree it looks fine. The problem is that it's not behaving in the way that I'm expecting it to behave, which means that there could be certain situations where it's just not going to be centered properly for certain specific outputs of cards, right? Like, I could say, oh, it looks fine almost every time that I do it, but that's not the problem. The problem is that it's not behaving in the way that I expect it to. And if something's not behaving the way that you expect it to, you're just asking for trouble, right? Like, I want it to behave in a predictable way every time. I want it to do exactly what I want it to do every time. Not just because, you know, it's a nice attention to detail to make it perfectly centered, but also because, like, I don't know why it's not working the way that I expect it to, and I'm not just gonna like sweep that under the rug and let that create an issue down the road. You know what I mean? So it looks fine, yes, I agree, but it doesn't work fine. Yeah, there's a random edge case that could cause a serious problem later. Yeah, that's basically it, right? So yeah, that's why I'm spending a little bit of time obsessing over this. But anyway. I actually have a meeting to get to, though, in 10 minutes, so I'm going to end the stream there. But thank you all for watching. Very much appreciate it. And thank you again to everyone that tried the most recent playtest. The playtest is now closed, but there will be more playtests in the future. So, yeah, I would appreciate it if you wishlist Alchemortis. And we're going to get a Steam page refresh up here shortly as well, which should be really cool. And yeah, wishlist Alchemortis if you're interested. You can also check out the other links in the description below. And what else? I think that's it. All right. I hope you all have a great day, and I'll be back at it tomorrow at 10 a.m. Eastern. So I hope to see you there. And bye-bye for now.